Wake up in the morning to another empty promise.
A cigarette here, a wrapper there. The water we flush from our homes, the chemicals bleeding off farms. This isn't just pollution, it's poison.
نفسية العالم صارت كلها خايفة منها، كل نفسية العالم صارت خايفة يعني.
Coming up, the toxins pouring into rivers, oceans, and us.
2 words: don't litter.
Meanwhile, fossil fuel giants are backpedaling. BP once spoke of transition and a cleaner path. Now it's pumping harder, drilling deeper.
Ultimately, I think the climate movement fights for people's lives, and we won't stop doing that because we realise the danger that we're facing.
And as polluters delay, the heat pounds like a hammer. For those without relief, it isn't just uncomfortable, it's deadly.
Are air conditioning units accessible, affordable in Pakistan?
No, I mean, not for everybody.
Just 2 degrees is on. Now,
We had temperature above 42 degrees centigrade for continuously for multiple
That is
hours.
crazy.
I'm looking for a light that shines in your eyes, bright as 2 suns that burn through the shadows of the night. And I'm trying to right a wrong through the lines of the sun, but I can't find the words or the energy to fight.
when water drains away from our homes, our farms, and factories, a lot of nasty stuff slips into the ecosystem. Stuff like oil, pesticides, even raw sewage. And that all ends up in our rivers and oceans without most people noticing it. And it's quietly destroying nature, endangering wildlife, and putting our own health at risk. And it's getting worse, pretty much everywhere.
When rain falls on roads, farms, and industrial sites, it doesn't just wash away dirt. It turns into a toxic cocktail of pollutants, oil, pesticides, heavy metals, and carries them straight into our rivers, lakes, and oceans. The result? A devastating impact on ecosystems and public health.
صناعي وصرف زراعي وصرف صحي. من حوالي 5 سنين أو 6 سنين اتغيرت نسبة المية للسمك المزارع والسمك البحيرة. ما فيش غذاء مثلا في المية نفسها، ما فيش غذاء 1%.
Agricultural runoff, industrial waste, and untreated sewage all flow together in a deadly mix. This isn't just about aesthetics. It's a matter of life and death for the ecosystems that depend on these waters, and for the people who rely on them too. In South Africa, where mining underpins much of the economy, toxic pollution from the industry has left a devastating impact. Heavy metals like uranium and lead, byproducts of the mining process, aren't simply washed away. Instead, they linger in tailing dams, earthfill embankments designed to store mining waste. There they remain, waiting for the next storm to carry them into rivers and groundwater systems.
The impacts will last not for decades but for centuries. Communities will be exposed to radioactive and toxic metals for hundreds of years. With regards to acid mine drainage, because the tailings dams contain 6 billion tons of iron pyrite tailings, and these tailings dams cannot be maintained in a reducing or oxygen-free environment, it will generate acid mine drainage for hundreds of years after mine closure.
The pollution doesn't stop at heavy metals. Agricultural runoff is also feeding an ecological disaster: eutrophication. Excessive nutrients from fertilizers cause algae to bloom uncontrollably, creating dead zones where oxygen is depleted, suffocating marine life.
There's a high correlation in this pre-spawn mortality phenomenon in urban creeks where there's a lot of stormwater pollution.
Meanwhile, heavy metals like copper, zinc, and lead are seeping into aquaculture, entering our food chain. Chemicals and bacteria contaminate drinking water, causing diseases and making antibiotics less effective. In urban centers, the risk is growing. When cities don't have proper drainage systems, stormwater becomes a dangerous mix. Chemicals, trash, and sewage all flowing unchecked into rivers and oceans.
Why is runoff pollution in 2025 such an issue?
There is actually progress, at least in industrialized countries, on the runoff water front. If you look at the way that civilization developed in the Middle East and in Europe and in South Asia, there was a lot of metallurgy starting with the Bronze Age. And that included not just copper and tin, but also lead. Lead is a fantastic material because it's so ductile. You can make pipes out of it. You can shape it easily. So it was a very sought after material. Sadly, it's also an extremely potent neurotoxin. And when you smelt it, you get a significant amount of lead in the smoke that comes out of your smelter. So you have background lead pollution across all of the old civilization zones of Europe and the Middle East. And there are even people who go so far as to say that the Roman Empire collapsed in part because everybody in that empire, from the Caesars and the senators on down to the slaves, suffered from various degrees of lead pollution, and so was more stupid, to put it crudely, than they would have been otherwise. Now, that problem has largely been solved. We recognize what the dangers of these products are, and for the most egregiously dangerous products like lead, we've tried to eliminate them completely from our supply chains and from our environment. But that leaves an enormous amount of other materials out there, including all of these new chemicals, tens of thousands of them, that have been invented by industry in the last decades. Very few of these have been analyzed properly. Very few of these we understand what impact they have on biology, on the neurotoxicity or what have you, and they are in runoff. They are in runoff everywhere. And runoff goes into sewage treatment plants. Runoff eventually goes into rivers. Runoff goes into the ocean. Runoff goes into aquifers. Runoff goes into our drinking water.
Are you worried that countries and governments are not taking runoff pollution as seriously as they should?
Am I worried that governments are not doing enough? Yes, I am worried that governments are not doing enough. I mean, anybody who comes from a scientific or a technical background, no matter what their domain of expertise is, will be worried that government is not doing enough to deal with the negative externalities of whatever they happen to be a specialist in. I happen to be a specialist in agriculture, so obviously I'm worried about the negative externalities of agriculture. At the same time, I don't want to paint it all black. Governments are by and large trying to do better, to do the right thing. And that includes the US. Maybe the federal government is not doing that at the moment, but you have to remember it's a federal republic of 50 states, and many states are taking matters into their own hands to ensure that the danger of runoff pollution is being taken into account and is being taken care of.
So governments can only do so much. What's one thing ordinary people like you and I can do to reduce toxins in our waterways?
2 words: don't litter. That's it. Don't litter. If everybody respects that rule, a significant proportion of this problem simply goes away. Don't litter means no plastic in the landscape. That means no microplastics in the water supply. Don't litter means no colorful wrappings with their collars that sometimes contain heavy metals that end up in the landscape. No littering means no bits of wire or bits of string that strangle animals. No littering is not just a question of aesthetics. It is nicer to be in a park that is not overrun by litter than to be in one that is, but it's also a question of public health. Don't litter is the easiest thing you can do. Put it in your pocket, throw it away in the bin. It's as easy as that.
Hey, great news if you're an Apple fan. The tech company says it's making big progress on climate, claiming it's cut its global emissions by 60% since 2025. But furthermore, it's on track to hit its 2030 targets. So that's according to a new glowing report by ESG Dive. But some experts are raising questions about how transparent and reliable those claims really are. Apple's also leaning more into recycled materials. 24% of what goes into its products now come from recycled or renewable sources. The tech giant says its MacBooks are built with 100% recycled aluminium, and nearly all the cobalt and rare earths in its batteries and magnets are recycled too. But critics point to ongoing concerns about Apple's carbon-neutral branding, particularly when a recent lawsuit accuses it of greenwashing. Environmental groups say some of the carbon offsets Apple relies on may not deliver real-world climate benefits. So while the numbers look impressive, there's still debate over how much of the progress is environmental and just how much is marketing. Well, while Apple says it's cutting its emissions and moving toward its climate goals, British Petroleum is moving the other way. The oil giant has walked back on key climate pledges. A new report by Global Witness says that the decision could lead to 72,000 deaths from extreme heat. Back in 2020, BP promised to slash oil and gas production by 40% by 2030. But now they're calling that target unrealistic. Instead, it plans to boost production by 60%. That shift has sparked a serious backlash. At their latest annual meeting, a quarter of shareholders voted against the chairman. And climate activists again accused BP of putting profits ahead of people. So we got in touch with Fossil Free London, one of the organizations that disrupted BP's annual meeting. Hi, Rosie. It's good to see you. Why do you think BP reneged on their pledges?
So we believe BP made that decision because, to be honest, profit comes above all else. And with corporations, fossil fuel corporations like BP, and with this, it means that like violence is written into the system. Those 72,000 deaths come as no surprise because BP will and always have put profit above all else, which means that expanding oil and gas, if it will make more money, is the decision that they'll make. We can see through the decades of BP's operations, both in the UK and across the world, that business as usual means millions, if not billions, being killed. Also, they can rake in, massive profits. And from decades of lying about the harms their emissions were causing, to then reducing their climate commitments last year to now completely scrapping them. And this goes against all climate science. It goes against, the best interests of people across the world. And it comes as no surprise because violence is written into the system for BP, and yet profit will come above all else. So it's no real surprise to us. They did it because they want to make as much money as possible from a dying industry that's already made trillions from accelerating climate breakdown.
Well, BP's decision wasn't well received by their own shareholders. Do you think they could pressure the company to get back on track?
I think from our perspective at Fossil Free London, whilst we recognise the important work that certain activist shareholders have in fossil fuel corporations to try and sort of pull them back into some element of sense rather than accelerating total climate collapse, we don't believe these fossil fuel corporations have a place in the green, just energy transition we desperately need. And ultimately, we don't think fossil fuel corporations like BP, like Shell, like Equinor, can be brought back in line and can be part of the energy makeup that we need if we're to have a livable, safe world for everyone.
We're seeing, especially in the UK, the government use law to silence people like you, organizations that you are part of. Does that make you afraid?
Ultimately, I think the climate movement and the climate justice movement fights for people's lives, and we won't stop doing that because we realise the danger that we're facing, the potential for the climate crisis to collapse our food systems, to flood our homes. We're seeing record-breaking temperatures get hit month after month after month after month. And whilst we're facing this repression here in the UK, across the world, in the US, that won't stop us fighting because we know what we're up against. We also know the world that we can win. We can win a fairer, greener, better world by, having a rapid, just transition towards cheap, publicly owned renewable energy. And we also know that's what makes sense. So whilst we face sort of like growing levels of repression, it won't stop us taking action because we know what's at stake. And we see the sort of violence that, corporations like BP are fueling, both from fueling genocide in Palestine. I think it's important to mention that here, with the BTC pipeline and being handed new gas exploration licenses, to the 72,000 deaths that just the scrapping of their climate targets will cause. We are fighting for people's lives, and we won't stop doing that.
Picking up on that last point, are you concerned about pushback because some climate activists connected climate crisis to other issues like colonialism, genocide, and that it makes your message less digestible to some people?
It's an interesting question, but I think our message has always not been that digestible to the powers that be, because when we understand what the climate crisis is, how we need to tackle it, and how we need to truly solve it, those questions become very uncomfortable. And so I think, from a climate justice perspective, from our perspective at Fossil Free London, we unveil the violence fossil fuel corporations and the government that are upholding them create, and we call for an end to them. And I think, understanding the layers of that's never a palatable question to the powers that be. But what it is palatable to is to people that are seeing, a massive rise in levels of global inequality, a genocide playing out on our mobile phones, and worsening climate breakdown. And those people are the people that we're trying to spread our message to, and ultimately building the power we need to win and to get our governments to take action.
So polluters aren't harming the planet by themselves. They've got allies, many of whom stay hidden so they can keep making money. The legal world's part of that too, and some activists have put together a pretty eye-opening database that shows which law firms are getting paid by dirty energy lobbyists and how much. So while lawyers cut deals with fossil fuel giants, the planet continues to show us the direction we're headed. And extreme heat is one of those clearest consequences. And when the temperature rises above 36 degrees Celsius, the risks of exhaustion and heat stroke get dangerously high. In April, a brutal heat wave hit Pakistan and India. In Pakistan's Sindh province, 12 weather stations recorded temperatures soaring to 42 degrees Celsius. Levels that can be deadly, especially for people exposed to the sun. So now the focus turns to survival. How are communities coping with heat this intense?
In India and Pakistan, owning an air conditioner has become a matter of life and death for some. Yet for the vast majority, it remains a distant, expensive dream. This leaves people with a crippling choice: stay inside, suffocating from the heat, or work under the scorching sun. A lose-lose situation.
गर्मी है, climate changes है, global warming है. इसके लिए इंसान जितना खुद को hydrate रखे वो ज़्यादा बेहतर है. बिला ज़रूरत अगर घर से बाहर ना निकले, it would be better for them.
In mid-April, Pakistan's Sindh province recorded dangerously high temperatures, up to 42 degrees Celsius for 9 hours straight. This extreme heat is a chilling prelude to what's to come, especially for outdoor workers, day laborers, and those already living in poverty. Have a listen to how these extreme temperatures affect the human body.
The cells and the tissues in your body can't survive being at a core temperature of around 41.5 degrees Celsius. If they're exposed to those kinds of temperatures, we start to see issues with proteins and enzymes denaturing, and we see decreases in just normal cellular function. So we see cell death occurring at those types of temperatures that they're exposed to, which would then lead to multiple organ failure.
These rising temperatures aren't just pushing the human body to its limits. They're also wreaking havoc on energy supplies, crops, and entire livelihoods.
हम लोग गर्मी के से बड़ा परेशान है, बस पूरा मुल्क परेशान है. देखो अभी जैसे कोई काम कर भी नहीं सकता गरीब आदमी. अभी रेडी चलाने वाला या कोई पैदल चलने वाला नहीं जा सकता है, या कोई मजदूर होवे तो मजदूरी नहीं कर सकता है.
Meanwhile, across the border in India, Delhi, a city of over 16 million people, it's the same story. Temperatures soared past 40 degrees Celsius several times in April, reaching levels 5 degrees Celsius higher than usual for this time of year. And in the western city of Nagpur, a fire broke out at a landfill, an all too common sight during the summer, as the combination of high temperatures and methane emissions from untreated waste triggers dangerous blazes. Heat waves have already claimed tens of thousands of lives in both India and Pakistan, and experts warn that by 2050, parts of India may become uninhabitable as temperatures surpass the limits of human survival.
So the heat that we've read about recently is literally heat that can kill, even if you're healthy and just sitting outside. When you hear that and when you experience it or know people who've experienced it, what goes through your mind and how people around you coping with that kind of risk?
Heat is not foreign to this part of the world, but with climate change and with rising temperature, it is really going to the levels which are fatal for the humans. And the first thing which strikes me whenever I consider these kind of warnings or forecast, the first thing which came to my mind is about the poorest of the poor. You know, the people who are the daily wages, who don't have access to electricity, are the ones who have to face the brunt if there is a breakdown of electricity, or those who are living in informal settlements.
So Pakistan is one of those generally hot countries.
Yes, exactly.
So then, can you see a discernible increase? Do you feel a discernible increase in the temperatures over the years?
Yes, of course, I do. I do. For example, in 2022, we had a record-breaking heat wave in the months of April and May, and which is followed by a devastating flooding, the record-breaking flooding in Pakistan. But in 2022, we had a springless year, and the conditions are pretty much the same. So, as a climate scientist, whenever I hear about such conditions developing, so it makes me uncomfortable. So I remember in 2022 when the temperature even in Islamabad, they soared up to a level where I could feel, and that was also during the month of the Ramadan. So I could see the daily wages, like they are moving. I could hear them while sitting inside my comfortable room. So it is really it gave me chills in the spine. It was very difficult to digest that somebody's working under the scorching sun while having the fast. But this year, the heat wave is more concentrated towards the southern part. I'm sitting in Islamabad, that is more towards the northern part of the country. So in the southern part now, it's in the plains of Sindh province. We had temperature above 42 degrees centigrade continuously for multiple
That is
hours.
crazy.
Yes, of course, that is crazy. And fortunately, right now, it is dry heat. So that is not, the
Okay,
humidity
so
levels are
humidity is not really
low.
an element. I mean, look, I'm looking at you and you look pretty shaded. You're not sweating. I'm guessing you're in an air-conditioned room. Are air conditioning units accessible, affordable in Pakistan?
No, I mean, not for everybody. So that's a huge question of climate injustice as well. So those units are not accessible to everybody. So even the transmission system of the country is also crippled. So in times of, high heat wave, the transmission system also breaks down. If the transmission system breaks down, I mean, their houses can become, the cookers. The heat balls kind of conditions can be created. In Karachi, it was a humid heat wave in Karachi in 2015, and the demand of electricity went so high that the transmission system could not bear the load, and there was a power cut, and power cut resulted in the deaths of the people. Heat can also impact the produce, the yield. In 2022, we saw that the wheat was ready to be harvested, the wheat crop, and because of the heat wave, there was low yield, and then it affected the economics of the farmers, and it can also have a cascading impacts. For example, if you are having these kind of events too often, then the farmer would also think to diversify or to change his occupation altogether. Then what he would do, he would move to the cities. Once they go to the cities, so the civic facilities, we just talked about the provision of electricity, provision of water, provision of other civic services. So it puts the load on once again. So it's a kind of a feedback loop. People keep on coming, then the government will try to address their issues, and then again, there will be more people who will be coming to the cities, because the issue of of rising heat and the climate change is not being addressed at the national, at the local, as well as at the international level.
And that's our show. I'll leave you with this. As pollution keeps pouring into our rivers and oceans, it's not just nature that's paying the price, it's our health too. The push for cleaner water has never been more urgent. The real question is, are we ready to step up? See you next time. Bye.
Come and save me, 'cause I'm so empty, and I'm not ready to go. All the patterns that you made on the walls of my brain are etched there like scars that'll never fade away. And I'm picking at the corpses of those who lost the fight, while I find a way to make it through another night. And in the depths of the darkness, I'm still looking for your light.